Hi everyone, welcome to another part of our data analytics technique series. Today we're talking about how to present and interpret your results as a data analyst. Why do I need to understand data presentation? Most times when you have an analysis, they have to mean something. It means you're trying to communicate something. So analysis alone is not sufficient for some stakeholders. So they need to you need to tell them, or you need to be able to interpret yourself how or what is this data saying. And you should also be able to speak the language of the result to the audience. That means to a more technical audience, you should speak a more technical language. And to someone who is a layman who doesn't know anything about the subject, you should be able to give them a background so that they would have a full grasp of what your result is. And just for the purpose of recommendation, probably from your analysis or from your results, you figured out that, oh, this is something that the organization or this particular company could do that could actually make them get better results. So that's like one of our job as data experts generally, and also to like aid decision making. That is, people can make decisions from like analysis or what you've done. And few times it's just like for just documentation, probably like somebody would come back and work on what you've done so they can know what has been done and then what is yet to be done. So one key thing you need to know is that your audience matters when you are writing your results or when you're writing your presentation for after your analysis is done. So you need to ask yourself, are my audience in the academia or in the industry? So the kind of reports or the format of your reports is going to be different from people in the academia or people in the industry. For academia, there will be more rigorous process of writing a report. It will probably be more detailed, and also even depends on the settings in the academia. And for most analysis, you probably find out that is in the industry. You also need to be concerned about what industry is it, the manufacturing, is it engineering. So all of those would determine how you write your reports. Also, like how familiar are the stakeholder with data analysis concepts. So you don't want to start to say terms like rows, column to people who doesn't really know anything about data analysis, and you don't want to use too simple words for people who are very like high experts in data analysis concepts. So another thing you need to ask yourself is like, do these stakeholders, do they prefer detailed or like just shorter documents? Like some people just want it straightforward report. Some people want to know the process of how you came about your results. So these are like things you need to figure out that would give you a guide of what your analysis report will look like. So these are some other things that you want to consider when you are writing your analysis report. So that is like trying to use the right color. So a lot of people might not have an eye for color, but a simple guide would be to use like the company's like logo color or like the brand color, or try to, if they don't have one, try to use like coordinated colors. So you don't want to, you can present the same thing and you are using weird colors and it's just making everything irritating. So you want to try to avoid that. So also ensure you're using the right visualization. In our last video, we spoke about the kind of analysis you can run for categorical data and numerical data. So ensure that you're analyzing your data like rightly. And one thing you need to keep in mind is you need to have this mindset that I need to keep it simple. Like keep it simple. Like it's very pivotal for you to keep things simple. That complex thing you want to prove or that point you want to show. First of all, say the most simplest stuff, say the most basic things. Then if time permits, then you can begin to say the more complex things. So always ask your stakeholder if they need the report or not. So not everyone will require you to write a report after you're done with analysis. So at your project onset, so one of the things we spoke about is to ensure to clarify with your stakeholder if you'll be writing a report for your analysis. But more often than not, you are going to be writing a report for your analysis, and also ensure that you are interpreting correctly and try to double check And this is a part where, like, I think when we talk about data analysis ethics, we would talk about this more explicit. So it's very important that you ensure that you are correctly analyzing the right thing, or like you are giving this the right variable for each variable. I mean, there could be possibility for human error, especially if you have a lot to analyze and you're not working in an organization where you are evaluating like the person's analysis or results. So when you are done, if you notice that you are tired, you could pause the analysis, then continue from where you stopped. But it's just best that you try to check that, okay, everything I've done is correct. I'm using the right variables. I'm answering the right questions and things like that. Another thing you also want to consider is that you yourself, you want to understand what your analysis is saying. Like that's like the first thing, or one of the first few steps to writing a report in your analysis process, in your data cleaning process. Before you are done, by the time you are done your analysis, you should be able to have a full idea of, well, this is what the overall result is saying. If you don't have that, there's no way you can even write a report that would make much sense to a stakeholder. So you need to ask yourself, have I fully answered the questions I'm analyzing? So based on the questions that the stakeholder wanted you to answer, so sometimes it's okay if you are not able to answer all the questions that was asked initially, probably because of data limitation or probably because of the limitation in your technical skills as at the time you're doing the analysis. So one of the things you can also write or include in your report is the challenges you faced or the fact that you were unable to answer this particular question. So that is like calls for transparency, and that makes the stakeholder know, okay, this is what we've achieved so far, and this is what is yet to be done. So also another thing is that you might probably find it difficult to write. You get better as you write more. And so just ensure you start with a draft, and maybe you look for samples if you can get samples from the stakeholders if they have a sample, but if they don't have one, you probably have to devise one yourself. So other things you need to focus on is like the format to present them. So a presentation or a report can be in form of a Word document, a or PowerPoint presentation just like this, or it could just be like a dashboard. And another thing, it could just even be like the raw outputs from like your Excel or Power BI or R or Python or whatever you are using to analyze your data. So the stakeholder might just care about, show me the raw outputs, don't need to write reports, and they might want things well organized. So nothing you need to focus is sometimes when writing a report or analysis, during your analysis process, you must have tried a couple of things, maybe different conditions. So because in analysis, there are many decisions that you would make. Sometimes they are difficult, some are very simple. So one of the things you want to insert first of all in your report is you want to report like the most interesting things. So you don't want to first of all report like the most basic things, because also if you try to report everything and probably they are almost contradictory, like, or they are like there are just so many information, one might not be able to fully understand, okay, what's the main point? So you need to ask yourself, someone who wants to glance this within 5 to 10 minutes, are they able to grab the main points? And that is why in your analysis section, on your reporting section, there's a section where you can impute like additional analysis just in case anyone is curious to want to like get to learn more or read more of the results you've done. So let's look at an example of a presentation in Word document, like a format that you would use. So a format that you would use is so consider like the audience is academia. So you have something like abstract. So abstract is what you write the last. So abstract is not like, okay, this is a summary of all the analysis, this is the approach we used, and things like that. So you can read more about how to write an abstract. I'll probably show you a sample so you can have an idea of what it looks like. So introduction is basically setting the foundation for like what you are talking about. If you're talking about marketing, if you're talking about gender inequality, talking about whatever you're talking about, So it's just like setting an introduction. Literature review is like writing what has been done in the past about like the concept that you're analyzing, and you could also build up on, okay, this is not what this is what I'm doing differently, and this build up to like your questions that you want to answer, like or the objective or hypothesis. So you can either choose one of these three. They are almost the same. So if I have a question of who is more likely to um buy a product, so an objective would be to analyze who is more likely to buy the product. Hypothesis is that, oh, a rich person is more likely to buy the product. So it's just the same thing, but saying it in different version. So data and method is you explaining the data you use and how you analyze your data, whatever condition you use, either you filtered and things like that. So analytical strategy, sometimes optional. You kind of like go in details like how you analyze data, like compared to like your data and method section. So result and interpretation, you write your results, you interpret what your result is saying, then you give conclusion, recommendation, and limitation. So it's not all the time you have recommendation and limitation. And you have reference, like part of like the articles you use, so you kind of reference them, and you had an appendix. So appendix could be where you have additional analysis or some analysis that you referenced in your main report that you do not want to like include the graphics because you feel like they would distract the reader. So you could also add that in your appendix. So appendix is just like additional things. So other things you need to think about. So if your audience is non-academia, so this is not like a generally like standard template for every industry. So every it might differ a little bit, but like this is just giving you a guide. So instead of having like abstract, so in non-academia like industry, so it's called executive summary. So executive summary is something you always try to write last. So it's basically this is what our result is saying, meaning if somebody just wants to read the executive summary, they should be able to understand like the data you use for your result, the focal points. So it's something you write last, but it's the first thing that will be in like the opening part of your document. So just the same way you have introduction, literature review. So you could make this optional. It depends on like the audience or like what the stakeholder require. So you also have like study questions, like that's also the same thing as research questions. So you have data and methods. That's it require like you kind of like explain explicitly the data you use, how you analyze them. However, some stakeholders don't care about how you analyze your data. So you might, this is something that you can also include. Other thing is also like the same thing as just the academia. We have the results and interpretation, conclusion, recommendation, limitation. So it's a little bit like almost similar, but like the content might be quite different. So these are things to note for like a Word document. So one of the things you want to ensure is that ensure that you label your tables or figures appropriately. So if it's a figure, like something like a graph, it's a figure. If it's a table, like something that has a table, it's a table. So for example, I have this table one distribution of customer by age. So if I have another table, so that's going to be table two. So if you have your first figure, it's going to be figure one, bar chart of customers preference. So you kind of label your figures on your tables well, and you do that like you order them so that you're not just having table distribution. So somebody can make reference to, oh, your table one says this, oh, your table three says this. So the convention, and this is not like some people would do otherwise. So the convention is to explain each result before you show the figure or table. So what does this mean? So before you show table one, you show what's table one. So you need to explain what is in table one, then someone goes ahead to see table one below. However, some people will put the table first and they will explain the table under the table. Like they will explain the results of the table under the table. But like the usual convention is to explain the table, then show the table. So you can say something like table one below shows ABC, then somebody goes ahead to say, oh, let me say the table you're talking about. And that thing also is to ensure your analysis is linking back to the research question or objective of the study. So as you are writing be thinking about whatever, if you have a question that was like first three questions, try to present your report in the order of answering this question. So, for example, you can have three graphs or three tables trying to explain just one of the question. That's okay. So just ensure that as you are writing your report, you are trying to link it back to the question or the objective. And if you are going to like the second question, you're also writing your report to link it back. So that's why when you order your questions, you should ensure that your questions are going in order that would make sense in you to do your analysis. So you can reorder the questions in your report just so that they would flow well. Your conclusion should basically reiterate like your analysis overall finding. Is basically this is what we've done, this is what the result is saying. So someone can have an idea of what analysis is or the result is like if they they check the conclusion section or the abstract section. So this is like in case you are doing like a PowerPoint slide. So these are like things to like note for a PowerPoint slide. So follow the same style either for academia or like or non-academia. So what do I mean? So just try to ensure you follow the style. So if you are reporting academia, so you are going to the way you what you did for Word documents, the same way you kind of have that section, that's the same section you have for your PowerPoint slide, and you can reduce them. It depends on the number of minutes you have that you're presenting. So try to have less words and show the most important results. Follow general presentation guidelines like font size, using pictures. And like I've said, make sure you are saying the most interesting results first. This is an example of like a dashboard. Like this is like trying to put in graphics, pictures. So most likely this dashboard was done from Power BI. You could also do something like this from Excel. So it's just like so visualization are not always like graphs and tables. So you see, just putting the number is also like a visualization, and it depends on the audience. So there are things that you would consider that you want to insert. So yeah, so you would get different styles from different dashboards. So you could just go to Google, type in dashboards and check different format, different style, and you can take a cue from them. So I'm going to show us an example of like a PowerPoint and a Word presentation so that we can have a full idea of what a PowerPoint and Word presentation is. So this is an example of like a PowerPoint, a Word presentation for a non-academia. So this is like the analysis. So the analysis is a case customer retention case study. So you're trying to look at so if from the executive summary, you should be able to understand what this is saying. The focus of this case study is to find a model that best predicts customer acquisition and also duration it takes for customer acquisition. So let's not just go into like details. So we have executive summary, the problem, so review of related literature. You see, this is just like a page or two, but like if it is academia, this is going to be a whole lot of documents here. So you have methodology. So it says, so you could just take a pause and try to read them yourself. So let me just go slowly. So you see, it goes on to the methodology. This the data included provided two major predictors. The first predictor is the data where so you see explaining like the decision process, the methods. This is the data. The data was from XYZ. This is showing the result. You see explaining the data. Let me show the result. So also shows the result, explain the data. So this is a box plot. So this is the findings and showing the result also. So results or going down. So it's a little bit of an advanced report, but it should give you an idea of what analysis look like. So conclusion and recommendation, this is reference. So ideally you will have reference in a different page, but like sometimes, so this is appendix. This is showing additional analysis. So this is like some appendix. So this is so you get to see like so there are different like ways to show reports, and that's like something. So let's go ahead and show us a kind of a PowerPoint presentation. So for PowerPoint presentation, you say this person kind of includes like a topic, probably the presenter's name. So talk about why and why not teleworking. So things like this. Go ahead and show this figure name, the results, and just say, oh, about 2 to 3 of this and this going down. So just like you use your style, it's just the same thing as more like you're writing a Word document, but like with less visual, with more visuals. So this is kind of a one of the what the results is saying, showing this. So you see how it's like graphics, so reports, so Sunday, so and so that's how. So yeah, you could take a pause and pay attention to how it is written. So you see, so it's like something that it's not like that very complex. So just like like so there are different reports that you find online, so you can try to check up like different styles, and you will get better by writing. And if you find different examples, so you can compare and construct, and you can have your own style. So just make sure you read more and familiarize yourself with this explanation. It's okay if you pause this video and you get to watch them and try to pay attention to some things that were said. Remember, like it's a journey, so don't compare yourself with someone who has been doing this for like 5 or 10 years. So it's ensure that like things are like, oh, you are making progress, and be curious and set goals. Remember that you can do this. And this is just to remind you, you could follow us on our various social media channel on LinkedIn, on Twitter and Instagram, or visit on our website at www.velonte.com, or send us an email at info@velonte.com. Thank you.